Welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm thrilled you can join us today. We're going to be talking about light therapy. And I love it because it's a non-invasive way for treatment for our cognitive issues. Now, for those of you that are new to our show, Alzheimer's Speaks is about sound news, not just sound bites. We like to have conversations with real people. And that means people living with a diagnosis, family members, as well as business professionals, all kinds of researchers, advocates, etc. I do want to give a few shout outs. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on. First, I have to always mention the Mark Arneson Band, though, because I'm so thankful that they allow us to use their song Clarion Call, which you can download on any of your favorite music platforms. Now, people are still looking for support. I hear that all the time. And Arthur's Senior Care sponsors a virtual memory cafe that we've been doing throughout COVID. And that happens the second and the fourth Wednesday of each month at 2:00 Eastern, 1:00 Central, noon Mountain Time, and 11 a.m. Pacific Time. And you are more than welcome to join us then. I also do a Caregiver Connect program, which typically meets in person. And I have my fingers crossed for March when we meet on the last Wednesday of the month that we're going to be able to meet in person again. The last couple we have done virtually. But you can register for that one way or the other at 763-913-6140. And if we can't meet in person, we will be meeting virtually. Now, our friends who have been working on a film called Determined, Fighting Alzheimer's, which follows 3 women enrolled in a new study to try to prevent Alzheimer's, is going to premiere April 6th on PBS on Nova. So check out what time it'll be in your area because they're all a little bit different. And then on April 7th and 8th, I'm going to be in Winona. It's going to be my first. No, I take that back. It's going to be my second in-person thing since COVID started. So I'm really excited. We're going to be previewing and doing a screening of the film A Timeless Love, which is about a family's journey dealing with dementia. And it is absolutely excellent. And then we will be doing a talk back with the audience on what they felt, because you're going to laugh, you're going to cry, but you're going to be in a safe space. So check that out with us. You can register for that with the Winona Friendship Center at 507-454-5212. And then on April 20th, I'm going to be doing a virtual event sponsored by Artist Senior Living. And it's called As the Cookie Crumbles. And so I will be sharing stories of my own experience, with my own mom who lived with the disease for 30 years, and giving you some tips and tools and trying to shift perceptions. And that will start at 5:30 Central Time. And that is hosted by Artists Living of Lakeview, Bartlett, Elmhurst, and Wilmette. And you can register for that at 312-423-1514, or you can go to artistway.com/Lakeview events. And then, of course, we have our friends with the ALZ authors, and they know the journey. And so basically, they want you to come and check out the alzauthors.com because they are a global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia from a personal experience. And they have the most comprehensive collection of hundreds of carefully vetted books and blogs covering all types of dementia and caring situations. Their authors' personal stories and painfully learned lessons can help you on your journey. They also have a fabulous podcast, and that is entitled Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia, which you can find on any of your podcast platforms. Remember, you're not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but they choose to form a choir and create harmony. And you can be part of that harmony by going to allsauthors.com. Of course, I have to shout out to Dementia Map, which I'm co-founder of. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. We are building it out. Every day it changes. There's like 150 categories that you can search. It's free to use and open to anybody. We have a calendar of events, a glossary, and a blog. So much out there. So check out dementiamap.com. We are going to hear from the Adaptive Equipment and Caregiver Corner, and they're going to talk about the footbar walker, and then we'll be right back.
I love the footbar walker, and let me tell you why. It is the option for my toolbox that I've been waiting for. Let's be honest. There are some clients who, despite our best rehab efforts, just aren't able to return to performing a sit-to-stand transfer on their own. Now I can offer my caregivers an easier, safer option that doesn't involve hoisting their loved one up from a sitting position. I don't recommend this walker for all of my clients, but I do recommend this walker for those caregivers looking for an easier, safer option with transfers. I would also encourage other therapists to add this walker to their toolbox. It's kind of like having my own mobile parallel bars for the client to pull up on. Whether it's a family caregiver at home helping a loved one with Parkinson's or dementia, CNAs in a long-term care facility assisting their patients, or therapists adapting to client and caregiver-specific needs, we now have a very safe and effective option to offer in the footbar walker. Check this product out at thefootbarwalker.com. That's it for today from Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. Have a great day, and don't forget, if you can't do it, adapt it.
Okay, we are back, and we're going to be talking about neurofeedback and light therapy and all kinds of stuff. So I want to introduce you to Liam Pingree and Marvin Berman, and they are the co-founders of Neuronic. Liam has a diverse background experience that ranges across 3 different continents, from off-the-grid solar in Rwanda to fund administration in Luxembourg to working on the trade floor in Manhattan, New York. And Marvin is also the founder of the Quiet Mind Foundation, and he brings a wealth of experience in neuroscience, neurofeedback, the clinical application of photobiomodulation. And he also is a neurotherapist and neuroscience researcher focusing on non-invasive treatments for neurodegenerative disorders. So today we are going to be discussing a non-pharma approach to treating brain disorders. So I know we're going to have a really interesting conversation with Liam and Marvin today. And I always start out asking my guests the same question because I think it's just nice to have a baseline. And that is, have you been personally touched by dementia in your family, your own circle of friends? And Marvin, I'm going to have you go first, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine. And the answer is yes. My grandmother developed Lewy body dementia when she was in her mid-70s, and she struggled with that. My mom took care of her down in Florida for a long time. And then my mom developed some memory and movement issues that we associate with a head injury. And so that precipitated a loss of memory and cognitive functioning. It was primarily associated with a head trauma.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Marvin. And Liam, how about you?
Yeah, well, firstly, Laurie, thanks for having us on here today. And yeah, my auntie was diagnosed with cancer a good few years ago now, and she suffered memory loss. And it got so bad that it was getting to the stage you would visit and she was no longer able to recall your name or even recognize you. And I suppose that kind of brought me closer to what I'm doing now. And I suppose maybe haven't spoken on it too much, but is a bit of a cause for why we are doing what we are.
Okay, thank you. Marvin, I want to ask you what prompted you to get involved first in studying the non-drug approach to treating brain disorders?
I think certainly my family history and then looking for resources for my grandmother and realizing that the medications that were available, 12, 15 years ago were not a whole lot different than the medications that are available now in terms of their effectiveness. And so I started looking into it. And because I'd been involved in behavioral medicine and specifically something called brainwave biofeedback training, I started to look at the literature in neurology that had to do with the monitoring of people in terms of brain activity who had been diagnosed with dementia. And I found that there was a considerable literature that went back almost 40 years showing the differences in the EEG brainwave activity in people as they progress through dementia. Well, it looked very familiar to me because of the work that I had been doing with brainwave biofeedback for people with epilepsy and ADHD and depression and head trauma. And so it occurred to me to then look in the literature for how the neurologists were using this data in terms of developing treatment for people with dementia. And I found absolutely nothing. And it occurred to me then that because there wasn't a drug, the neurologist didn't have anything to offer. So then it became clear that the silos of knowledge were segregated, and that the neurologists were not looking at behavioral medicine, and the behavioral medicine people were not publishing their research in journals that are being read by neurologists. So we set about doing a study where we looked at the data that came out of the neurology research, which had to do with the slower frequency brainwaves gaining in amplitude as people got more involved in dementia. So the voltage of the slower brainwaves went up while the voltage of the faster brainwaves went down as people progressed in their disease. So we just said, well, wait a minute, maybe we can do something. And we set up a study where we went after training people with dementia to decrease the slow wave amplitudes and increase the fast amplitudes. And then we measured them with neuropsych testing. And in fact, they got better. And so that began me thinking very seriously about how we can use these tools that have been around for 50, 60 years, but they're not drugs, so they're not getting promoted. And we can use them very effectively.
Well, I love that. I think society as a whole is starting to really look for more non-pharma equivalents out there that they can tap into, because as you know, we haven't had a new drug. I mean, that was the whole big blow up with the last one for 20 years. And just because we haven't had a new drug doesn't mean that we want one that doesn't jump through all the hoops. And so for me, it's been really exciting to see all of the different things that are coming into play and really being looked at closely, especially since COVID. People are looking at that, the social engagement angle as well, which was highly, I think, ignored for many, many years.
Right.
And really realizing, hey, this affects all of us, not just people with dementia. And so, I love what you're doing. Liam, I'd like you to tell us how did the two of you even meet? Because you're in Ireland and Marvin's here in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess really the idea of Neuronic and how I kind of got into this was quite a bit different from Marvin, because he has the scientific background, whereas I come from the kind of business side. And originally, the idea came to me when I found this video of a guy wearing a bucket on his head with a strip of near-infrared lights inside it. And in the video, it reported the guy had Parkinson's and he'd been taking medication for it, but the meds just weren't effective anymore. The video reported that the guy had used his helmet daily for a couple of weeks and 9 out of 10 of his symptoms had improved. He was able to play the piano again. And so I thought, what's the science behind the use of near-infrared light on the brain? Is it actually possible? And secondly, if it is, surely we can develop an actual helmet or similar and have it manufactured so people can access this rather than a bucket that you'd use for a car wash and a strip of LEDs with a strap stapled on the side. So around that time, I was in my apartment across from Manhattan in New York, and I was currently not able to work as the COVID pandemic had struck. And the nature of my job, which was price and risk on derivatives at the time, made it hard for the company to allow me to work from home straight away. So not really wanting to sit idle, I rang Marvin Schuner, who is our German business partner, who I'd met while studying in Concordia in Minnesota. We were in the same entrepreneurial class and had worked together on previous projects. I pitched him the idea, sent him the video, and said, surely we can do better. After a year of going around talking with people such as doctors, patent attorneys, advisors, professors, we came across more and more research and a name that popped up several times, which was Marvin Berman. So I connected with Marvin on LinkedIn and tried to speak with him, asking if he could help us, as I had seen he had developed his own device with others. And his initial response was charging us an hourly fee, or if we wanted, we could book him for the whole day. And given that we had no money and not even a company established, I said I'd get back after I consult my business partner, which I didn't, and instead proceeded to message him, sending him a picture of the device we intended on selling. His response was, I think you were meant to contact me. Here's my number. Call me when you can. And ever since, we've been working together with his colleague, Sarah Turner, as well, who's known as the Rebel Scientist. And shortly after, we registered the company as it's now known as Neuronic Devices Limited.
Wow, that's such an interesting story, and I think it's fascinating that you saw this bucket on someone's head and just said we can do better than that. But it also fascinates me that someone tried a bucket on the head with some lights and was willing to just try that and see what happened. I think it's so interesting the progression of research and innovation as it happens, and what inspires people and how they get connected.
Absolutely. And the guy, Max Weber was his name. He actually came across a study, I believe, in Australia. Marvin, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was done on rats, and they were using the near-infrared light on the rats, and it showed the progression, and it was able to cure the disease they had. So that's where he got the idea from, and he contacted his local GP to work on this and source equipment to make it. And that's how he started with the bucket on his head.
Yep. And there's a very strong community in New South Wales and Queensland and Adelaide that are working very hard on developing photobiomodulation approaches to treating neurodegeneration, specifically Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Which is fantastic. Marvin, I wanted to ask you, why did you want to start investigating combining the photobiomodulation and the neurofeedback?
Sure. Well, I can pick up where I left off. So we did the research study showing that neurofeedback could, in fact, improve people's cognitive and behavioral functioning, but we were not intervening on the actual tissue level disease process. What we were doing was making the remaining brain connectivity, the brain connections, work more efficiently, which in and of itself is a good thing, but we were essentially changing the slope of decline. We weren't really treating the underlying disease process itself. And when you boil down the disease process, it comes down to two things: lack of blood flow and inflammation. So when I was looking at the literature on that in the scientific literature, I was seeing various and sundry papers about different approaches to them. And one day I got an email from the husband of one of the people we'd been working with. And it was an article in the Daily Mail in London, which is not exactly a peer-reviewed scientific journal. But when I saw the article, it was actually a discussion of a paper that was in the British Journal of Neuroscience. And when I read that paper, I realized that these were serious claims that these people were making. And they were talking about using 1,070 nanometer light to reverse dementia in an animal model. And so I went and looked very carefully at what they were doing, realized that they were, getting very really viable and lasting results using this particular wavelength of light. And that's when it hit me that maybe photobiomodulation could be the tissue level intervention that was going to address the lack of blood flow, the hypoperfusion, or the inflammation. And that when you did that, you were now resolving the underlying degenerative process, so that when you then worked on repairing and renormalizing the electrical connectivity using the biofeedback, now you had the makings of a solid, more reliable and lasting solution. So that's what we've been doing ever since. That was back in 2008.
Wow. So this isn't something that's new. I think a lot of people think it is. I mean, I think back to the day when
it's not new. I mean, how new is getting sunshine?
Yep. But, and I think back to even people saying, they're going to do biofeedback, and people thinking that was kind of new agey.
Yeah, right. It's been around for 100 years.
Yeah. And
it's it's covered by Medicare. That's how new it is.
Okay. Well, that's good for our audience to know. But I just think that, things have changed. And I think there's also been a lot of misinformation out there about what things are and how they can help. I wanted to ask you in terms of seeing how these newer radiants improve the existing types of light therapy technology, because there's various ones out there already, and how is yours different? I've heard from, and I'm very much a novice when it comes to this. I am not a researcher or a medical person. I'm just a daughter whose mom had dementia, but I've heard people talk about things from the voltage to the type of light to the thumping, but because some of them flash and some of them are steady. So can you tell us a little bit more, Marvin, about that? And then Lehman, I'm going to have you explain kind of the helmet coverage and how that works as well.
Right. Well, the issue about the flashing and the continuous, there's been evidence that the flashing can help with deepening the penetration of the light into the tissue. The other thing that helps deepen the penetration is the actual wavelength of light. And the higher the wavelength, the deeper the penetration. So many of the devices that are out there, in fact, I would say almost every device other than ours is using something in the 800 to 850 range, and ours is in the 1,070 range. So what we found is that the higher the wavelength, the deeper the penetration, and that the pulse rate can also be effective in two ways. So when you pulse the light on the scalp, you actually get the brain to start reacting to that specific frequency, and the EEG, your brainwave activity, begins to match whatever the pulse rate is that you're putting in. And so with our knowledge of biofeedback, we can then influence both the brainwave activity and affect the tissue by getting the light into the cells in the brain and having them increase their output of energy, as well as making the tissue in the blood vessels itself more flexible, and thereby letting more oxygen get through to the parts of the brain that are getting starved for oxygen. So that's a big part of it. The continuous light is good for cosmetic purposes, as well as kind of overall energy, kind of feeling healthy, but kind of like being out in the sun for a couple of hours. But those are some of the basic issues about why we chose what we chose to work, to use in the Neuradian.
Yeah, and I think answering your question, it's different again. One of the main devices I think people know of when they think of photobiomodulation is the V-Light, and that's kind of like a wire frame that has 3 to 5 specific points in which it targets of the brain, whereas ours is a more complete helmet that covers the kind of whole surface of your head. That with the 1070 lights, which Marvin already said, not many other people have used in their helmets or devices. And lastly, we've been working hard on a new user interface and control box, which basically allows the user to control 4 quadrants of the helmet in line with their brain pretty much. And Marvin, I know that was something you were working on a lot to get into this new device that we were releasing.
Yeah, that's true. And it was very important because of this idea of the brain being able to mimic or imitate what's coming in. So depending on what kind of issues we saw in someone's brain electrical activity, we could then target the stimulation in different ways to be able to normalize the overall brain electrical activity, while at the same time improving the health of the tissue and also protecting the tissue against further injury. Because one of the things that we've shown in the research is that 1070 confers protection to the brain cells, the neurons. It actually protects against further injury. So it not only helps repair, but it also helps protect against further damage.
I have a question. So if people using this, can work with the interface, can it go higher than the 1070, or is there a limit? Because I can see some people going, let's push it a little bit more.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's a very important distinction that we need to make. The pulse rate is the number of times that the lights in the helmet turn on and off per second. The wavelength is the actual measurement of the wave, the electromagnetic wave on the spectrum of light. So when you're going from ultraviolet to infrared, and then you go above that into gamma waves, we're talking about wavelength of the light. That's a difference. That's different than the number of times it turns on and off. So what you're going to be able to control in the Neuradian helmet is the number of times it turns on and off per second. And you can control that in the front of your head, the back of your head, your left and your right hemisphere. So that's just turning on and off, not the actual wavelength of light.
Okay, well, that's good to know. The other thing that I have seen out there, and I would imagine that the helmet is much more effective than just lighting sitting in your room, because I've seen some of those out there too that say, well, just set these up in your living room or by your desk or.
Yes, that's a great point. The 40 hertz light bulbs that are out there now are getting at an important piece of insight from the research on dementia and photobiomodulation. And that was when they pulsed light at 40 times per second into the cages of animals. And then they measured the amount of amyloid plaque that was in their brains. They found that there was a 50% reduction in the amount of beta amyloid in their brains after getting stimulated for an hour. The next sentence that gets unfortunately left out is that when you turn the lights off, the beta amyloid level returns to baseline within about an hour or two.
Wow.
So it's a, it's marketing, but the real story is that as long as you're doing the stimulation, you can affect a change in the amyloid level. But as soon as you turn it off, it goes back to normal. It goes back to abnormal.
Well, that's really interesting because, of course, I've never heard that.
No, of course. Well, and that's because people tend to read the headline and not the whole study.
Yeah. If they read the study at all, and I would, to me, in some ways, that is mismarketing if that's what they're leading with. And I'm not saying anyone is doing that, but again, I've heard of these different variables out there, and I don't remember ever hearing, that it bounces back to where you were, and that's a pretty big thing to know.
Yeah, it's not a minor detail.
Exactly.
Well, with the helmet, with the Neuradiant, that makes the point that I was trying to establish, is that if you're going to make a lasting improvement, then you really have to affect a change in the overall system of how the central nervous system is able to process information. And that means that you're making the system function more efficiently. And that requires that you address the underlying toxicity and other issues that are going on. That photobiomodulation and neurofeedback are very central to a correction and an improvement, but you also have to be dealing with, the issues of, Lyme disease, for instance, or other kinds of toxicity. You have to make sure that those kind of issues, those underlying issues, are also being addressed. And we take that in the field of functional medicine. So our approach is really to look at making sure that people are getting treated for the underlying causes, getting support with the photobiomodulation to make the kind of improvements in their system and protect against further damage, and then use the neurofeedback to help renormalize the connectivity so that the brain can function more normally over the long term.
Which makes a lot of sense. I did want to ask, because I'm sure when you're doing research, did you try a higher level than the 1070?
Yes. We were up at 12. There was a group at 1267. There were, that was about as high as anybody's gone, because one of the things you want to avoid is you don't want to actually heat up the tissue like in a microwave oven.
Okay.
Right. So you don't want to use a far infrared light like they use in a sauna, right? Because this is one of those situations where you don't want to cook the egg.
Okay.
So staying in the near infrared range, you get energy being directed into the cells, but you don't create any kind of heat in the cell itself. There's no heat being created. It's just energy being imparted into the cell.
Okay, that makes sense. Anything, Liam, that you wanted to add on that?
No, I think Marvin's covered it all, really.
Okay. Well, one of the questions I also wanted to ask, and I'll throw this to you, Liam, is, what are the plans for the future in terms of light therapy and neurofeedback?
Yeah, so as we've kind of laid out there, we're currently selling the device as a light therapy wellness device. And as such, we don't have the EEG capability built into the helmet. As of right now, Marvin, through the Quiet Mind Foundation, offers neurofeedback training. And we hope in the future we can add the EEG capability into the helmet. So you buy the device and it's able to offer the photobiomodulation and provide that EEG feedback. And we're looking to build a platform in which the user can log in and see their performance, how much of an effect the light has had on them, and hopefully share this with their local GPs, doctors, or other people that are doing studies or trying to monitor their progress with something like dementia or Alzheimer's.
So that was one of my next questions was, is this something that can be purchased and used at home, or do you have to go into the clinic?
Yeah, everything that we've designed is to be used at home.
And are you gathering, the feedback from the neurofeedback and the statistics from all of these so that you
Yes.
can still further research? Okay.
Yes.
Well, this sounds really, really exciting. It's another option for people to be able to utilize and look at and assess. I know some of our audience is probably wondering what the cost is here. And I don't know if that varies from continent to continent and if that's something that you can share with us, but I think that there might be some questions on that.
Liam's got the role of handling marketing and sales.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So our base version, the Neuradiant 1070, is 2,995, so effectively 3,000. And then we offer the Neuradiant 1070 with the 4-quadrant capability, so the ability to control the 4 different quadrants, and that's for 4,995. But it includes 3 months consultation with Marvin, and this is to make sure people are using the device correctly, and they're also getting training how to use it and guidance on why they've come to use the device, and then their background, medical history, things like that.
Okay. And is the training for both devices or only the quadrant one?
We're only offering the 3 months with the 4-quadrant one.
Okay.
However, people can book consultation with Marvin. That's no problem either.
I know that the basic unit is really designed for people who are not dealing with a diagnosis. And we will be giving them an hour of orientation about how to use the device. Everybody will get an hour of, orientation type consultation when they purchase the basic unit. But if they're coming to this with a diagnosis, then we're going to talk to them about how this might be an adjunct, this might be a useful tool to help them with remediating some of their symptoms.
Sounds good. And I would imagine if they need support, there's a line they can tap into for that if they've got any questions or anything. As far as the helmet goes, this might sound kind of goofy, but again, just shows that I know nothing. So I think as a consumer, how long is this helmet going to work for? Is there a time limit on it, or will it run out of juice? How does that work?
The design is such that it's solid state equipment, and the likelihood that it's going to wear out is pretty unlikely.
Okay.
So I would say a minimum of 5 years and maybe longer.
Okay. I was thinking it would most likely, not run out or whatever. But sometimes, with software updates and things like that, I didn't know how that worked within the headset itself.
Yeah. The reality is that this is an extremely individualized type of design. So we're going to be able to customize the delivery of the stimulation to the person rather than kind of taking a scattershot approach. So as long as the equipment holds up, then you're going to be giving people precisely what they need in order to get the most benefit from the light stimulation itself.
Okay. And then Liam, is there just this one-time cost, or is there a subscription cost with this as well? Because a lot of times people purchase something and then on top of it, there's a subscription fee.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just a one-time fee upfront, and then it's paid. If it's the more expensive version, it's 3 months consultation, and that's all paid for upfront. However, if people want to have obviously more consultations, either with Marvin or other clinics that we partner with, which I think is worth mentioning, we are working with other, I suppose, consultants, so they can deliver this photobiomodulation consultation as well.
Okay.
And then users, if they feel like they need kind of ongoing support, they will have that.
Okay. Well, is there anything that I haven't covered that, that I've missed, Marvin? Anything that we should add?
I think it's important to let people know that this is a safe and useful, easy to use tool that can help improve mood, focus, ability to concentrate and relax, and that our goal is to get this technology accepted in the broader traditional medical community, but that's going to take a while. And that we're here to help, and we'll be available to answer questions from people's physicians as we go along, so that they can use this device in conjunction with their regular medical providers, because this is certainly not in any way to be considered medical treatment, but it certainly could be useful in the context of somebody's overall care and overall treatment.
Okay. One question that I didn't ask, and I should have, especially in this day and age, is, people are asking, I think more often now, is it FDA approved or not?
No.
Okay.
That's what I meant. That we're working on getting the traditional government and other reimbursement agencies, insurance companies, the FDA. We're in conversation with the FDA at this time, and at this point, they've also, acknowledged that this is likely to be considered a non-significant risk device according to the FDA's own criteria. We're working on getting that official designation now, and we're also working on getting approval to conduct the kind of trials that you can do as part of an effort to commercialize the device. So we're getting deeper and deeper into that process, but right now we want to be focusing on making sure that the device works as well as we can get it to work, and that it helps the people who are starting out to use it, the early adopters, starting the end of this month.
Okay. So another question I just thought of that we didn't really talk about is, and I know everything is individualized, but how often do you use this thing? Is it like once a day, once a week? Is it multiple times during a day?
Lori, you're right. It is individualized. So there's no simple answer to that. Certainly once a day might be a more general approach, but there are people who are very sensitive to this type of stimulation, and so we might be telling them to try it every other day.
Okay.
Or using it for shorter periods of time at different times of the day, depending on a lot of different factors like their sleep schedule. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a very individualized process at this point.
Okay. So if somebody bought the 1070 and they get that hour orientation, is that something that would be covered with them in terms of, do I use this multiple times for shorter times, or
No.
Is it kind of a trial and error?
Yeah, that's why I was saying anybody who's one of your audience members, I would say that it would not be advisable for them to think about trying to buy the cheaper model. I really wouldn't recommend that.
Okay. Yeah, because that's important, because it's like, you wear it an hour, do you wear it 15 minutes?
It's going to be something that we're going to have to work out over time anyway. It's going to change as people become more acclimated to the stimulation. Then they may be able to increase that amount, or they might need to decrease it. It really is going to be dependent. The basic model is for people who are wanting to do this as a preventative, program of maintaining their overall cognitive wellness, brain health. People like that, or people who are into what they call neurohacking or biohacking. That group of people can take this device and use it as part of their overall, health maintenance program. But anybody with a diagnosis, I think, should be thinking seriously about getting consultation.
We've got a lot of people that live with dementia alone and don't have a care partner. I would imagine, depending on where they are on the spectrum of the disease, that would make a difference in terms of ability of use, because again, sometimes time does make a lot of sense to them.
Well, a caregiver, a caregiver would want to use this device to maintain their stress level at the same time as they're working with whoever they're giving care to.
Okay.
And that would be a very advisable thing. We advise that almost as out of hand to people everybody should be using the device.
Okay. Well, and I do remember hearing, about just the relaxing, piece of this.
Exactly.
And,
exactly. This is a very good way to manage the stress, the caregiver burden that everybody has to deal with as part of the process of helping people deal with, the progression of dementia, any chronic illness, frankly.
Yep. Liam, I wanted to ask you if there was anything else that we missed.
No, I think we covered everything. One thing though was that 1 hour free consultation that comes with the normal Noridian 1070 is we have a form that people fill in, so we will know ahead of time before that 1 hour consultation if someone has any medical history, and be able to kind of provide a little bit of advice on that going forward. Like Marvin said, most of the time people buying that device won't have any severe kind of medical history or ongoing. However, if they do, that will kind of be picked up in that form once they kind of provide the details of it.
Okay. And then, I'm just kind of curious because I'm in Minnesota. I just see a lot of chiropractors going down the more holistic mode, and many of them are purchasing, different things to be able to help their clients. Is that somebody that you guys are targeting? Because I think that would be a natural fit in a lot of ways from what I see from a lot of chiropractors. They're looking for alternative modes to be able to help their clients, and many of them are having cognitive issues.
I think that it'll be important for us to target and build relationships with any healthcare providers who are interested in, non-drug, non-invasive approaches to treatment.
It's not even us targeting those people. We've actually had those chiropractors come and approach us and ask, how can we get involved? How can we do this? What are the offers you have if we're going to kind of partner with you or affiliate programs? So already we've had quite a bit of interest from different kind of groups of people, such as chiropractors or general wellness clinics, looking to kind of get the devices, or sometimes in bulk, so they can offer it to people in their clinics.
I could see that easily, and just even speaking at their conferences and showing them more about this and stuff. So I always look at everything from a marketing angle when I'm talking. That's just kind of my background there. Speaking of marketing, we want to let people know how they can get a hold of both of you. And Liam, they can get a hold of you at teamneuronic.online. So team@neuronic.online. And then you are also on LinkedIn. And Marvin, you can find him at Marvin Berman at Quiet Mind, and then FDN.org for foundation. He is also on LinkedIn. The website is Neuronic Online, and then they also have a Facebook page, which is Neuronic Devices Limited, and Instagram, which is Neuronic _ and then LTD, and then Twitter is the same as Instagram there. So again, really appreciate you both taking the time to be with us. Was there any contact information that I misstated or should have stated and I didn't? I want to make sure that we cover it all.
I think it was perfect.
Those of us who were collecting Social Security still use the telephone. So 610-940-0488 is the Quiet Mind Foundation phone number.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a good thing, because there are a lot of people that just like to talk to somebody directly. and
those of us with arthritis in our thumbs.
Well, it's coming to the younger generation with all their tweeting and texting that they're doing. So I think it's going to hit them way earlier than it hit us.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for being with us. For our audience, please like, click, and share, and go to their website, check it out, or reach out to them. Really appreciate everybody's time here today. And I found this just fascinating and exciting, the progress that we're making and the different avenues that people are looking at and exploring.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.